You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors, USA. Larry Connors, USA.
I woke up this morning, got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
Larry Connors, USA. News and commentary.
March the 26th, 2021. This is a story that might be sliding by without a lot of attention, but it's big. It's big. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, Republican, signing an election bill that will strengthen voting rules in the Peach State. It will limit the number of ballot drop boxes. It will establish photo ID requirements for absentee voters and other laws to preserve the integrity of the election. The bill also gives the Georgia State Elections Board the ability to take over county election boards in areas that may require some oversight. In other words, to make sure they are running the elections correctly. Well, of course, we have in the Congress, both in the House and the Senate, Democrats pushing forward bills labeled as HR1 or HB1 and SB1, basically to federalize all elections. So the Georgia rules and their passing and what he just signed, they would wipe out if they get their way. Keep that in mind. And what might be one of the unofficial starts, we should say, to the next race for president, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in Iowa today. That makes the first potential, 2024 Republican White House hopeful to visit one of the 4 early voting caucus and primary states. Of course, a former congressman from Kansas, also served as CIA director, top diplomat during the Trump administration, said, I'm just making trips across the country, took questions. He said, we take care of 2022, 2024 will take care of itself. Dominion Voting Systems filing a $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit against Fox News. They argue the cable news giant falsely claimed that Dominion was involved in rigging the 2020 election, arguing that Fox News sold a false story of election fraud for its own commercial purposes. And in the lawsuit, they state the truth matters. Lies have consequences. Yeah, well, to that point, keep in mind, Dominion's also filed a $1 billion lawsuit against Sidney Powell, former Houston attorney who was part of the team for Trump for a period of time as they were challenging some of the election results. And Sidney Powell is scheduled to join us before we wrap up this hour. You do not want to miss that interview. And also Michael Flynn's brother and sister-in-law now suing CNN for $75 million. The Flynn family, it claims that CNN was basically locking them all together with some of the far extremists by some of their coverage. They might end up losing, but at least they're putting up a fight against it. The deadly storms across the Southwest hitting hard in Alabama, tornadoes. Centerville, Alabama hit hard. Newman, Alabama. And we have reports of at least 8 dead throughout that area that are confirmed. 25,000 in Alabama, 13,000 in Georgia still without power at last check. And one of those injured during the storms was a Florence, Alabama police officer putting up barricades on a roadway, suddenly hit by lightning. He is going to apparently survive. Senator James Lankford, Republican of Oklahoma, was on a long part of that tour of a Texas migrant facilities along the southern border, along with Senator Cruz and others. And he took some pictures and video showing a migrant holding camp. He said, this pod where you see these people, he says, designed to hold 80. He said it has 709 in that area, built for 80. That's exactly why the Biden administration does not want pictures coming out of that region at this point until they sanitize it and clean it up. Good story here. I'm glad to hear this. There are additional charges to be filed against the guy that carried out the mass shooting in Boulder, Colorado. I know he's not yet convicted, so I maybe jumped the gun. Well, he was the only one in there that had a gun and was doing the shooting. 10 were killed during that, 1 including a police officer. And North Korea, of course, showing that it's going to continue its nuclear weapons testing. What are we going to do about it? So far, nothing specific from Biden. But we do know that they have 2 short-range missiles they fired into the sea this week. That's their first meaningful provocation since Joe Biden took over. Are we going to do anything? Are we going to do anything? And a cargo ship larger than the Empire State Building, still stuck in Egypt's Suez Canal. Now, that could sound kind of funny, except it's a costly joke. Navigation through the Suez Canal temporarily suspended. Westbound traffic with goods and containers worth about $5 billion every day can't get through. Eastbound traffic with goods about $4.5 billion also can't get through. So you got $10 billion each day sitting in the water. They can't move because this other ship is stuck crossways in the canal. Not so funny, is it?
Larry Connors, USA. News and commentary.
Most of us are taking precautions to avoid COVID in public, but what are you doing to make sure your home is free of COVID? Wellington Environmental is the answer. And here's the great news. Wellington's average cost to professionally treat a home, less than $300. Less than $300. And the cost for treating most offices, not much higher. Be ready to copy a phone number to get on the schedule as soon as possible. First, let me remind you, if you want your own professional fogging device, Wellington sells them, price $500. But say you heard about it from Larry Connors, save $100. If you want your home or office professionally disinfected by Wellington, here's the number, 314-644-4930. Again, get on the schedule early, 314-644-4930, 644-4930. Be well with Wellington. Wellington Environmental. This segment of Larry Connors USA is brought to you by my friends at John Beal Roofing, covering homes and businesses throughout the Midwest. The best quality, lowest prices. John Beal, 1-800-NEW-ROOF, 1-800-NEW-ROOF.
Oh, Susie Q. Oh, Susie Q. Oh, Susie Q. Baby, I love you. Susie Q. Like the way you walk. I like the way
This is Larry Connors, USA. Larry Connors, USA.
And the other thing we're doing, I might add, am I giving you too long an answer? Because if you don't want the detail. No, but I mean, I don't know how much detail you want about immigration. Maybe I'll stop there and finish. I believe we should go back to a position of the filibuster that existed just when I came to the United States Senate 120 years ago. So the best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway, we're going to get a lot done.
That is Joe Biden yesterday in his news conference, reminding you I like the way things were when I first went in the Senate 120 years ago. 120 years ago. Look, mistakes are made. I've never made any. If you buy that, that's the best bluff I got. You and I need to play poker. I'll see if I can pull that one off in the poker room with you. And little mistakes will happen. But the overall thought of many was this guy capable of doing this conference? I mean, he didn't do it now until his 65th day. 65th day. I'm looking at a piece here that was kind of written by, it's on a Breitbart piece, so you know it's going to be a conservative approach. Joe Biden's 5 most awkward moments. And you heard one of them, and here you've got Biden claims I miss former President Donald Trump. He does at one point. He'd been talking about running for re-election. Yes, I know. He's already talking about running for. We'll explain why in a moment. But he said, my predecessor, oh, God, I miss him. And then he had another brain freeze when he was talking about something. He just stopped. Just couldn't go farther. And he starts halting and so forth. I did the other day. I read a transcript of a news conference he was doing where he was not taking questions. And I read it in exactly what is written, halting, starting, and then saying, kind of like that. I had one viewer, I should say listener, respond and say, you are so vile. You would mock his stuttering. How dare you do that, mock a man with a stutter? First of all, I don't know that Biden has a stutter. I've never even heard that before. But I was not mocking, quote, a stutter. I was delivering it kind of as he apparently did it, according to the transcript. If you thought I was making it up then, I guess what are you going to do this answer? There are some haters out there. They just look for some hate. And I'm not hating on Joe Biden at all on this. If the man has some difficulties, I feel for him. If he's facing beginnings of dementia or deeper into it, I feel for him. I do. But I don't want him to be our president. And I certainly don't want the person behind her doing it either, or the person behind her either, or anyone else on that side. But that's another day. We have to look at that as a past election. But we're not going to be totally ignoring it because we do have Sidney Powell coming up later in this hour, one of the lawyers who was on the Trump team to fight against the election results until she wasn't. And now she's being sued by Dominion for some of her statements and allegations at the time. But another thing Biden said yesterday, he talked about the Jim Crow law, as he referred to it, the filibuster. He said that's kind of back to the days of Jim Crow, like Jim Crow, Jim Eagle. I had no idea. When he said Jim Crow, Jim Eagle, it makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. I have to admit, I had no idea what he's saying. I don't even know where that one goes. And, of course, he was asked about transparency at the border, getting a chance to go in and take a look. We're going to get into that as well. And the answer you're going to hear is, again, fumbling around. And as one reporter did try to relay a story about a 9-year-old who crossed the border by himself and so forth, he kind of got a little snippy that I'm doing more than Trump did. Trump left him over there to starve, which is a lie, and nobody called him out. The other side has no problem with throwing lies around and not being held accountable, and slurs and slander. Like the guy that sends me that message on one of the Facebook accounts saying you're mocking, you're a vile person. I wasn't mocking. I might still be a vile person, but get your facts right. It fits right beside another Facebook comment that came in when we were doing a piece about Rush Limbaugh's death, and someone wrote in, Limbaugh and his trash need to stay buried in his casket where they belong. That's supposed to be civil. That's the civility we're supposed to get from the left, coming together as Joe Biden has been preaching, together. So let's go back to the news conference. I'm going to focus on how the reporters failed to do their jobs. You can give Joe Biden a lot of failing grades. We're going to get into that as well. But the reporters, they're responsible for doing their own job, but they failed. They are adoring, they're fawning, they're almost rushing up and kissing his feet. Listen to this. Listen to this.
The perception of you that got you elected as a moral, decent man is the reason why a lot of immigrants are coming to this country and entrusting you with unaccompanied minors.
Republican legislatures across the country are working to pass bills that would restrict voting, particularly Democrats fear impacting minority voters and young voters, the very people who helped to get you elected.
Do you hear that? Because you're a moral and decent man, that's why illegals are now coming. And Biden even played off of it. He said, well, yeah, he said they didn't come because Trump, that wasn't Trump, obviously. You don't begin a question like that. I think that was a PBS reporter that asked that. PBS, your tax dollars support PBS. Your tax dollars support a PBS reporter getting up there and saying, you got elected because the perception is you're a good, decent, moral person. The side story that she's not saying is very clear to all the rest of us, isn't it? And to everyone else. You're a good, decent person, and Donald Trump wasn't and isn't. Listen, when I had done interviews, even if they were tough subjects, sometimes you kind of set up a little softball question, kind of take things slow and easy if you have the time to do so, if it's not live and you don't have to really pounce on it. Because you kind of want to get them at ease. You may ask a couple tough questions and back off a little bit and then come back around, depending on how it goes. When I did the Obama interview, I I already knew this was in 2013 when he was pushing or 2012 when he was pushing the Warren Buffett Act. And I knew that I was probably going to have maybe 4 minutes maximum with him because other reporters had gone ahead of me, and one at a time you go in the room, you sit down. I will have to say again that I have interviewed other presidents, 5 others, Reagan, Nixon, Bush, both Bushes, Clinton, Lincoln. Oh, shoot, I keep forgetting. I'm not supposed to put Lincoln in. Forget that one. But I've always been in reach where I could just lean forward and shake hands with him. In this case, I would have had to walk 5 to 6 feet before I could even shake his hand, as long as he sat there. But the bottom line is, I knew he had an agenda, so I have to kind of take it easy. And I say in the beginning, Mr. President, I know you want to talk about the filibuster. I mean, about you want to talk, I'm going to filibuster. You want to talk about the Warren Buffett bill. But at the same time, got a lot of questions from our viewers. I know you'd like to answer their questions. And he said, yeah, sure, I would. So it kind of set the hook that he won't take all the time so I can ask some questions. But in this case, when you stand up there with all the other reporters, you talk about you're such a kind and gracious man. That's the way you're perceived. Even some of the liberal reporters were almost gag me with a spoon type thing. And then when it came to the question, listen to some of this inane questioning.
My plan is to run for re-election. That's my expectation.
You also just made some news by saying that you are going to run for re-election.
I said that is my expectation.
So is that a yes, that you are running for re-election?
Look, I don't know where you guys come from, man. I've never been able to travel. I'm a great respecter of fate. I've never been able to plan 3.5 years ahead for certain.
And if you do run, will Vice President Harris be on your ticket?
I would fully expect that to be the case. She's doing a great job. She's a great partner. She's a great partner.
And do you believe you'll be running against former President Trump?
Oh, come on. I don't even think about it. I have no idea.
I'm going to have to side with Joe Biden on that one. Where are you going with these questions? Of course, he's the one who started and said, he suggested it, didn't he? And she jumped in on it, and then she went the rest of the way. I mean, then is Harris going to be there? Or you expect to face Trump? I mean, the questions were softball questions every step of the way. Trey Gowdy, of course, who had been a U.S. congressman, is always very clear and direct on what he thinks about something. He does not mince any words, and I like that. I wish he still were in Congress. In fact, a man with his knowledge of the law and everything, I'd be a perfect guy to be on the Supreme Court, either Gowdy or Senator Cruz. But either way, of course, Cruz is sticking to the Senate for this time, and you've got Gowdy deciding to leave Congress, and now he's a consultant, a paid consultant, we should point out, for Fox News. But he had his opinion about the so-called press conference. Listen to this, please.
Yeah, Brett, I'm going to try really hard not to beat up on journalists for that pillow fight I watched this afternoon. I didn't hear a lot of great questions. Maybe that explains how a lot of them didn't get into law school, but I didn't hear a lot of great questions today.
Yeah, they weren't smart enough to get in law school because they can't come up with a decent question. Now, when it comes to grading the president himself, there's a pollster, Lee Carter, that was kind of monitoring responses to the president's comments. And that was during that thing yesterday. And they kind of have some people holding dials in their hands and kind of by their reaction, they're indicating if they think he's a pass or fail or whatever like that. Democrat voters graded him with an A, no doubt there. Biden got Fs from both Republican and independents, saying he had, quote, no idea whether to be a Republican Party in 2024, being asked if he had faced Donald Trump. And the pollster said that really torched his message of unity, says he's a president for unity, and yet says, I don't even know if there's a Republican Party. Completely dismissive of Donald Trump, laughed at him. So I think that came to the front. F grade from Republicans, D from independents. Basically, those watching it pretty much went along a partisan line. And the independents, that's a key. How are they going to judge that? Now, this is the first one he's had. Will we have another one? And when? And when? And the other problem I have, yes, he was using notes to refer to. I don't have an issue with that. But the problem I do have is that while he had a book full of pictures of the reporters from the press pool in the room to help identify some of them because you're not around them enough to know them. That's okay. I'll grant him that it was well. But there appear to be numbers beside some of their names. In other words, you're going to call them in this order. I want to know, and I asked yesterday, did the reporters have to submit their questions in advance, and then they got ranked in that book as to who he was going to call in what order? They did not call Peter Doocy of Fox News White House correspondent. He said, I got a full list of questions I want to get to, but he never got called. Got snubbed. Not a pre-approved reporter. But they would call on someone who says, you got elected. The perception is you're a good, decent person. And that's why illegals are coming here, because they like you. That was billed as a press conference. It ended up being a public relations outing, judging by the, quote, reporters in the room. And I said in the opening monologue today, as much as I've gone against Jim Acosta in the past for how he went after Trump, if I'd been in that room, I'm afraid I would have pulled a Jim Acosta. I would have stood on my chair and yelled, "Stop the charade." Oh, I would have gotten a lot of TV time. I know that. Probably been escorted out. But call it for what it is. It's not a news conference. It's a kind of come together and let's just kind of, chew on some things a little bit. Like when I was in the Senate 120 years ago. And then the question about transparency from the Biden team. That's a good question. It's coming up.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
Give me one reason to stay here, and I'll turn right back around. Give me one reason to stay here, and I'll turn right back around. Said I don't want to leave you lonely. You gotta make me change my mind.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Will you commit to allowing journalists to have access to the facilities that are overcrowded moving forward?
I will commit when my plan very shortly is underway to let you have access to not just them, but to other facilities as well.
How soon will journalists be able to have access to the facilities? We've obviously been allowed to be inside one, but we haven't seen the facilities in which children are packed together to really give the American people a chance to see that. Will you commit to transparency on this issue?
I will commit to transparency. And as soon as I am in a position to be able to implement what we're doing right now, you'll have full access to everything once we get this thing moving.
Okay. And just to be clear, how soon will that be, Mr. President?
I don't know, to be clear.
I don't know, to be clear. That's Joe Biden. And that was a legitimate question yesterday from one of the reporters at the news conference. And they continue to press it. I'm glad. That reporter gets accolades from me. Probably not from the Biden White House. Maybe they didn't know that they would continue to press like that continuously. But when are we going to get to see things? Well, when we get things straightened up, we're going to be transparent. But we're kind of busy down there right now. And, of course, he hasn't been down there to see anything. The other day he appointed Kamala Harris to kind of oversee immigration. She has yet to go to the border. Yesterday and still today, Senator Ted Cruz and some other senators are down along the border looking at the situation. And one of them sent out a picture that says this pod, this area where you see all these people, is built for 70. 70. And there were 600 plus in that one area. They don't want you to see it. They're going to sanitize before anybody's allowed to come in. In other words, they're going to claim that the pictures that the senator sent back had to be fabricated. They didn't exist because you see what we have here. It's all good. Everything's good. Kids are getting steak. They're getting new Game Boy consoles, everything. They don't know what they're doing, and they refuse to accept the fact that it's Biden and his approach and what he's been saying, open the border, along with all the other Democrats. And Kamala Harris overseeing it now as a California state senator. She was all about building a sanctuary state and sanctuary city. They don't believe in borders. They want everybody to come in because they're looking at votes. And Senator Ted Cruz, by the way, said while we have been watching and going along the border, he said at one point we've been seeing cartel members, human traffickers on the other side of the river waving flashlights, yelling, taunting Americans because they know the Border Patrol is under the current policies of the Biden administration, so they can come over. He said the coyotes are getting something like $4,000 to $5,000 a person to smuggle them in, and when they get in, the Biden administration releases them. That's what's going on at the border. That is why they don't want you to go down there and see anything right now. That is why even a U.S. senator was not allowed to take along a news crew embedded with him. Their belief is what would be, news crews down there would be too difficult, cause a lot of problems. So they didn't seem to have one concern at all about that when Trump was president, did they? Every news crew, I mean, if Al Sharpton wanted to go down there, he got a news crew to go with him, and nobody's going to stop them. No, they want to, again, kind of build their own narrative. And as long as you don't have pictures that refute what they're saying, well, then they expect you to buy it. Just flat buy it. We're not buying it. And I'm glad Senator Cruz went down there and some of these pictures are coming back. Of course, they will later try to say, well, things are better now. Yeah, I'm sure by the time they actually let news teams in and they claim to be transparent, they couldn't spell transparent. Today, Dominion Voting Systems filed a $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit against Fox News, $1.6 billion, claiming that Fox News sold a false story of election fraud and stating in their release that the truth matters, lies have consequences. So Fox News sold a false story of election fraud to serve its own commercial purposes, severely injuring Dominion in the process. $1.6 billion. And Dominion Voting Systems is also suing our guest who's coming up. Sidney Powell, one of the original lawyers helping challenge the last election. Sidney Powell being sued for $1.3 billion. Got her story with her interview coming up live. Please stand by.
You can email Larry at LarryConnersUSA@gmail.com. LarryConnersUSA@gmail.com.
I'm sure many of you do enjoy entertaining guests. I mean, it's your nature to be hospitable, but we all draw the line at unwelcome guests. You know, those that come in tramping around, they're 6 feet, 8 feet, more. And when that happens, you do not want to delay. Call Rottler Pest Solutions immediately. Now, I started using Rottler more than 30 years ago because I wanted professionals. Rottler knows what is needed, and at the same time will make sure that your family and pets are safe. Rottler is still family-owned and operated for 3 generations, protecting homes and businesses. 3 generations. That's impressive. So when you want to safely, expertly get rid of ants, spiders, and other critters, call Rottler Pest Solutions, 877-ROTTLER, or you can check their website, Rottler.com. 877-ROTTLER. 877-ROTTLER. Rottler Pest Solutions. Rottler.com.
I am flesh and I am bone. Rise up, ting, ting, like glitter and gold. I got fire in my soul. Rise up, ting, ting, like glitter. Like glitter and gold. Like glitter, do you walk in the Valley of Kings?
This is Larry Conners USA. Larry Conners USA.
Sidney Powell, one of the lawyers who pushed false election fraud claims for former President Trump, is now moving to dismiss the $1.3 billion defamation lawsuit against her from Dominion Voting System. And the way she is doing it might just explode your brain. In a new court filing, her lawyers argue, quote, reasonable people would not accept such statements as fact.
It's official. Sidney Powell is a massive fraud. That's according to Sidney Powell herself.
Those are remarks on CNN. Because Monday, Sidney Powell's lawyers filed a defense against a $1.2 billion lawsuit filed against her by Dominion Voting. 1.3, let me correct that. That point makes a difference. And we last had Sydney on back in March, and you folks said we want to hear more from her. Well, she's back today. Sydney, so glad to have you join us. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Let me begin with a question. I'm going to come back to what they just stated and get into that in more detail. And the question is fairly easy. I'm not sure your answer is going to be that easy and simple. How are you doing in the midst of all this?
Well, it's just extremely entertaining. It never ceases to amaze me what they manage to twist and how they can lie about some of the most simple things. But that's all they've got. That's all they've got is lies and hyperbole and just absolute ridiculous statements.
Folks, a lot of you may only know her from the case to try to overturn the election and prove that there was fraud, things of that nature going on, reference Trump. But you need to keep in mind, you're listening to an American attorney, former federal prosecutor. I mean, so she has knowledge. She's not just somebody fresh out of law school. And Sydney, I had to admit, when I saw CNN put up, said, your claim is that, well, nobody would believe what I said. No reasonable person would believe what I said. What kind of argument is that they are demanding that you are making? Are they even reporting it correctly?
No, they're not reporting it correctly.
Surprised.
I know. It's really, anything that the news reports anymore cannot be trusted at all. It's really a sad day in America when you can't even get a basic report on something that straightforward, right?
They're obviously, the bias and the reason for stating it the way they did is to make it look like, as you heard one of their other commentators say, just more evidence that you are a fraud, always have been.
Right. Well, that kind of goes against a 43-year legal career, not to mention the reversal of the prosecution of General Flynn, which I accomplished, which changed the face of history, and proving the same things that occurred there that are occurring here. This election was a massive fraud. I will go to my grave maintaining that and have more evidence of it every day. We are not quitting on any of our litigation. In fact, we have some new cases in the works that will be quite stunning, and we are going to proceed to prove the fraud everywhere we can find it, and it was widespread, just as we said it was. What's absolutely terrifying is we've witnessed the institutional failure of every institution in this country that was supposed to protect American citizens from the government and protect the rule of law. Every single one of them has completely failed, and they know it. They know it, and they're lying to us every single day.
When you say that you have more proof and more case, did I hear you right? You have proof that will be proven? I mean, that's a very good statement, but of course everyone says, what do you got to back it up?
Right. Well, hopefully within the next 2 weeks, it will be apparent to everyone.
2 weeks. All right. We'll continue to watch that. Now, again, their attitude about suing you is that you, Dominion says, you just made stuff up for your own purpose, for your own value, and that's why they want $1.3 billion. You owe them.
Yeah, well, they owe the American people because they created a fraudulent voting system created for the very purpose of enabling fraudulent elections and enabling the manipulation of the vote. They know it. We have witnesses that say that. Everything I've said about Dominion is based on sworn testimony, expert affidavits, mathematical studies and statistics that don't lie, and witnesses that know exactly what was done and why.
You know, you are an attorney, and of course, there's always been the philosophy that an attorney should not represent themselves. So you have another group representing you, but normally the advice would be don't talk to the media. Don't be giving this interview to Larry Connors. Sidney Powell, don't talk to him because that'll end up being used against you as well.
Well, you know, they're just going to have to deal with it because I'm going to speak the truth.
Good. I mean, you make your point. I'm here to get both points. If they want to make a point, they can call me and do the same thing. Now, the other question is, you were in with the Trump camp, and then you weren't. Are you having any contact with Donald Trump at this point? Are you involved at all in anything? Is he part of anything you're doing, or are you and another group just doing this on your own?
I never did represent the president. it was obviously not going to work from my perspective, because I am going to follow the truth wherever it leads, including problematic Republicans who have done things wrong and know about the voter fraud or facilitated the voter fraud. And the chips are going to have to fall where they fall. That's why I started defendingtherepublic.org. And we intend to give voice to the 80 million people who saw their votes stolen and suppressed by every means of fraud imaginable, and some that were not imaginable. And we want to pursue that corruption and expose that corruption wherever it leads, Republican or Democrat.
And it is, again, defendtherepublic.org. Now, defendingtherepublic.org. Okay. Now, one of the times you were seen, well, you were around the Trump camp and Giuliani and the rest of them for a period of time, appearing at news conferences, and you're saying you didn't specifically represent him. I hear what you're saying. I don't know if the others hear it, but then later you were seen apparently leaving the West Wing, and a reporter asked you about what we do, and we were seeing, and your response, typical Sidney Powell, Kurt, was none of your business. I mean, so when they see you leaving, they're thinking that they just boot you out. Did you ever explain what happened, or do you want to? Or is it none of my business? Let me put it that way.
No, I did not explain what happened, but I would encourage everybody to read Patrick Byrne's book, The Deep Rig. It'll explain a lot.
Now, the other part of this is a lot of folks are saying what you were doing and others like that, or any of us who simply won't accept the election that Biden was duly elected. Of course, Hillary still is not to concede that Trump won, that you are partly responsible for the event that happened on our Capitol, January 6th. What's your opinion and view of the event itself?
That's unmitigated, absolute falsehood. Had nothing to do with that, and Americans are entitled to their free speech and our opinions expressed of political events. That's just baloney.
Well, there's a difference between the political speech, those who gathered to hear Trump speak that day and say, come to here and make your voices heard, compared to those who battled against police and or had got into the Capitol anyway and went through and started looting and doing some damage and things of that nature. And I that's where I had to draw the line. I mean, they may want to say they're doing patriotic duty, but at that point, anytime you start turning against police, I have to say that's too far. Your take?
Oh, definitely no. I wouldn't encourage violence of any kind. I wouldn't tolerate a broken window or anything else. And it also shouldn't have been tolerated throughout the last year by Black Lives Matter and Antifa.
Yeah.
And still going on in Portland right now. But to single out the people at the Capitol for the unusual punishment and being detained without bail and things like that are happening right now, while the Antifa and BLM and all the destruction's still going on in places like Portland, that's outrageous. It's just more double standard that the American people voted against, and they know it's not fair, and they know it's not right, and they know it's fascist, authoritarian crap that's being rained down on us because of the whole communist takeover that's been happening in our country.
I just wish you'd be more candid. For a Texas woman, you seem to mention you'd hold back a little bit. Hey, Memorial.
I know, I'm always so subtle.
On Memorial Day, I know that at the Omni Dallas that there's supposedly you and Flynn are going to be speaking. Apparently, some are calling for God and Country Patriot Roundup. Others are already saying this is just another reason to get QAnon and everyone else fired up and cause violence. Are you going to be there, and what's the purpose?
I'm going to be there. The purpose is to celebrate this great country and Memorial Day and all that it stands for. I don't know what QAnon is. I'm not a supporter of QAnon. I don't know anything about it. Neither does General Flynn. They need to just stop the crap.
Dominion had said previously, if you just apologize, we might kind of walk away. Are you in any mood to apologize? You're looking at $1.3 billion. You won't even say two words, I'm sorry?
No, I'm going to prove they're the crooks I know they are.
You know, you got a lot of folks that are following you, and they certainly want to see you continue to push that. I see them from my Facebook page and listeners all the time. So you do have support out there. But you're going to need a lot going forward, and we definitely appreciate you spending time with us, Sidney. We'll do it again.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sidney Powell, direct from Texas. Yeah, I like a Texas woman, just doesn't hold back. She doesn't. You can let others know that this is on, and we're also going to be putting it up on our YouTube channel and podcast later as well. Coming up, woke cancel, woke culture again.
You can follow Larry on Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
What you want, baby, I got it. What you need, you know I got it. All I'm asking is for a little respect when you come home. Just a little bit, hey, baby, just a little bit. Just a little bit.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Well, once again, the Washington Post forced to make a significant correction. They had to alter a headline because they originally claimed there was, quote, no migrant surge. How could they put that up? But that's what they stated. There's no migrant surge. The headline now reads, the migrant surge at the U.S. border is already a predictable pattern. So, okay. We're going to acknowledge it's a surge, but it's predictable. That's what Biden was saying the other day. They are going to come. This is time of weather. Every year it's a seasonal thing. It is to an extent. Yes, the better weather encourages. But when you have the president of the United States as Joe Biden saying basically we're going to cancel all of Donald Trump's rules to protect the border, maintain our border, and deal with illegals, and not letting them in and making them stay in Mexico if they want to seek asylum. Yeah, there's more than just a seasonal change. There's a ground-shifting change, and they're smart enough to realize it. That's why they are surging upon the border. Charlottesville, Virginia. The mayor of Charlottesville, Virginia, published a poem the other day. I got to tell you, I just don't know. This woman is so far to the left, she won the endorsement of the Democratic Socialist of America. Charlottesville hasn't had a Republican mayor in more than 40 years. Now they've gone this far. And what she wrote, I can't read the whole thing to you. I just can't. I mean, there are a couple things, as much as I try not to hold back on you, there's some things in here I can't. But she begins kind of like this. Charlottesville, the beautiful ugly it is. It rapes you, comforts you in its sea-stained sheet, and tells you to keep secrets. It covers your death with its good intention. Charlottesville rapes you and covers you in sullied sheets. That's the mayor of Charlottesville talking about her town. I wonder what the other folks in Charlottesville, Virginia had to think about that. I mean, my God, that's the mayor is writing that kind of stuff. And then we got the woke culture cancel well underway. Minnesota Theater got word that they cannot run a musical production coming up. You know this musical production. You might not have seen the one in Minnesota, but you know the storyline. It involves Cinderella. They're not going to do the stage play as they were planning, a musical production, Cinderella. It's going to go the way they say of the dodo bird. According to the Pioneer Press, the cast is upset. They're just saying we have no option. There's nothing that can be happening. You know what the problem is with this? Someone decided when they looked at the story of Cinderella, and you know the basic story of Cinderella, right? I mean, how many times have you heard the story? Well, the story of Cinderella has always been, and they were just going to kind of carry it out the way it was. It wasn't meant to show anything but the way the story's always been told. But in our new woke culture, you can't do that. They're canceling it, they say, because of content. What is it in Cinderella that needs to be canceled? The ad, we're canceling it because of content, but we're looking forward to bring it to our stage in the future. In other words, we're going to work on a way to get around this. And in place of it, they're going to do Footloose, based on the movie Footloose. And they're also going to do Music Man, until somebody calls out that for cancel culture. What is wrong with Cinderella? It came down to the fact the cast. The cast was 98% white, and Cinderella basically is a story about a white woman, and they decided they're not going to do it, and they got canceled. Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella just doesn't pass the woke culture nowadays. Which brings a question to mind for me. And I mean, you mix up the cast. I mean, if that's what you're after, I'm not sure what would you do to appease it. But I'm just thinking, Andrew had sent this. My boots on the ground correspondent in Chicago spotted this and sent it to me. And my response is, well, what's next? I guess they're going to have to cancel Frosty the Snowman, because that's pretty white too, isn't it? Generally. And then if you're going to go down this cancel culture list like that, you're going to have to stop talking about polar bears, because every polar bear I know is white. I'm sorry, but I think all polar bears are white. We can talk about grizzly bears. They're not white. Or brown bears, but they're brown. They're not black either, if that's the issue, or white. But I guess just for the future, let's keep in mind there's some subjects that are going to be taboo. No, it's not the fact that you're talking about 3 months old changing their sex and being willing and understanding, or even at 3 years or 13 years. But everything else is just too much. All right, if you missed our interview with Sidney Powell, it is going to be up on our podcast shortly, also on our YouTube channel. Please look and share. Last time around, 120,000 saw that, and I know many want to hear this latest interview. We'll be back next week. And remember our pledge, one nation under God.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Thank you for listening to Larry Connors USA. Please listen to previous and future podcasts